This is a Balanced Brain podcast with your hosts, Melanie Nicholson and Sean Clift.
Welcome back to the Balanced Brain podcast. My name's Sean Clift, and I'm joined once again by my good friend and co-host, Melanie Nicholson, and the emphasis on friend, Melanie, because that's what our topic's about today. How are you, my friend?
I'm really good, thanks, Sean.
That's great. Look, great topic today. So our podcast is all about friendships. Let's get into it. You and I met pretty randomly, 10 years ago?
Yeah, about 10 years ago. We're both working in political offices and we had a meeting and you actually drove me back home because I couldn't get back home for some reason. And we're just having a big chat in the car about our lives and how I was going to be talking about my acquired brain injury in front of some audiences, and you were giving me some media tips about that.
That's right, yes.
So I got straight to telling you about my life pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, you had to really, because I think I sort of helped you out with that process there to do some speaking at that time.
Yeah, definitely. It was really handy, and we built that rapport really quickly.
But we started out as sort of professional colleagues, didn't we? We sort of did some consulting work together. We did some training workshops. We did some marketing stuff. So we had a really good professional relationship to start with. So how do you think we became the great mates that we are now?
I think we're both really upfront and honest about what was going on in our lives at the time, whether it was just stresses or things that were on our mind. But we didn't really have to start off, I guess, in a superficial sense, did we? We just went straight into what was happening all around us. And I think that's where you build a friendship pretty quickly, when you might talk about those type of things that take a while to develop normally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think because we were sort of working on your speaking engagements around your brain injury, we were talking about how, things are affecting you. So you're pretty vulnerable to me up front. I was probably a little bit guarded to start with, but we sort of developed a good trust with each other. And then, I was going through my issues with mental health. I'd just been through, a major job breakdown, and that was very, very stressful. And I don't know, I think there was a bit of trust there between us really early, and we started being quite honest and vulnerable with each other and developed a really good friendship really quickly.
Yeah, and I was at a time in my life where friendships, like I've always had in my 20s, had really good friendships, a really critical part of my life. And then once I sort of hit 30, well, people, tend to marry off and have kids. And I was single for all of my 30s and without kids. So I was kind of in a bit of a no man's land with friendships. So I was quite open to meeting new friends, but I didn't know how to go about that. But it turns out that some of the best friendships I've made are random occurrences like that. So, and that I just learned that's how things should be sometimes instead of pushing it.
Yeah. So here we are, hey, 10 years later, and we've got a podcast, 22 episodes in.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's really good. Sean, should I start with some of the research that I did on Google?
Yeah, absolutely. So
around
what do you got?
So it was a big trending topic last year. So not 2020, but 2021 was big. So there was a huge jump in people Googling how to reconnect with friends after COVID, how to make friends. Yeah. Is it normal to be jealous of friends? That could be a young person's question.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Is it normal to argue with friends? And is it normal not to have any friends?
Well, that's really interesting. Well, I mean, let's go with the first one.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's been that'd be a big topic, because being locked down and those lockdowns for that period of time, people are working how to reconnect. I mean, particularly if you've got friends from interstate or from, other areas, where at that one point in time, remember what it was like for you and I, Melanie? It was 12 months before you could get across the border into Queensland to visit your friends and family. We didn't see each other for 12 months.
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing I was thinking that might be contributing to that is the big work from home thing for a lot of people.
That's a very good point.
Because if
Very
I
good
think
point.
about how I made all my friendships when I was younger, it was through the workplace. Like when I was in the Air Force, that was a given. And then even when I was at the child support agency, we had a massive social club, and that's where I knew all my friends. So I'm just wondering if that's having a part to
I
play.
totally agree. I mean, some of the great friends that I've made over the years were through, the work environment. So, like when you're stuck working from home, you're not there, you're missing out on that social circle. I think that's a really good point. But also, just the physical barriers of lockdown and border closures and stuff like that made it hard to sort of connect with people as well.
Yeah. And I guess it made it hard to connect with family. So, I guess a lot of people would have to prioritize family over seeing mates, right? Like if you haven't seen your mum for
Yeah,
12 months,
exactly.
then yeah. So that's quite
Now,
interesting. But I do think these are things that have always been around pre-COVID. Like,
oh, definitely.
how do I reconnect with old friends?
Particularly the last point. Is it normal not to have any friends? I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of research going around now, particularly for men, Melanie, that men, once they hit their 30s and they have children, their friendship groups diminish rapidly.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's unusual for a lot of men in particular, and I'm just talking from anecdotal evidence and a couple of articles that I've read, but there's a lot of blokes out there that don't have a lot of friends.
No. And what? I think it's important, if we're talking about values, there's some people, they obviously value friendships in a different way. Some people, it's really important to have mates, and that, includes for men as well. And for some people, it's just a nice to have. So not everyone values that, but I think most people would love, one or two good mates, because I think it's always good for our mental health to have that balance.
I totally agree. I mean, I totally agree with that. I'm very lucky. I've got a really great circle of friends. In fact, I've got a couple of circles of friends, that I spend a lot of time with, that I value deeply. But I think there's probably men out there and guys out there that they just get really busy with their work. They're focused on their career. They've got kids at home. It becomes a little bit harder to sort of have the time for those friendships. But it takes a lot of effort to maintain friendships.
It does. And, it's really interesting, your situation, because you're one of the few men I know who've had mates since high school, and really close mates.
I've actually had mates since I was in primary school. In fact, after we record this podcast, I'm starting to get ready to catch up with those guys. Every year we go away on holidays together. There's 5 families that go away, and we've all been friends for well over 30 years. In one case, 35 years we've been friends. So, my best friend Gary and I have been mates since I was 5 years old. And my other best mate, Chris, I've been mates with him since I was 11 years old. And my other best mate, Jeremy, these are the families that are going to catch up together in a little seaside town up at Woodgate next week. So those friendships we've had for so long, I'm very, very lucky.
But how have you kept them going? Like, I think that's what a lot of listeners would like to know. Like, how have you kept friendships that long? And what are the key ingredients, and how do you maintain that when you've got family, you've got kids?
Well, like I said, it takes effort, but also after all of these years, particularly with that friendship group, so much has changed, so much has gone on through our lives, and somehow we've just sort of managed to keep it going. So if I reflect on it, really, I mean, but like part of what we're doing when we go away is almost a ritual in a way. It's almost a it's a part of our culture. It's something that we do every year. So as often as I sort of catch up with those guys, individually, and sometimes we catch up as a group. Our other close friend Jeremy, he lives up in Agnes Water, so it's quite a distance away. It's a sort of 6-hour drive away, so not able to catch up with him as much. So that's part of the reason why we get together every year. We have a week every year about this time of year where we celebrate those friendships. So there's a lot of reminiscing, a lot of old stories, a lot of good laughs. But it's also about, our kids now connecting with each other. And what the most beautiful thing to see is that after all of these years, when we were knocking around together as 10 and 11 and 12-year-olds, our kids are knocking around together and they're developing those friendships as well. So, for example, my little girl, Rosanna, and my best mate, Chris's little girl, Kalani, they're best buds. It's so beautiful to see. And so I think that, we call each other regularly. I'd probably be on the phone to those guys, once a week, once or twice a week. My friend Jerry. Yeah, my friend Jeremy, he's a mining worker, so he has a long drive once a week to get to work, and he will religiously call us on that drive to have a chat and to catch up. You've got to celebrate those milestones and successes in life. All of us now have very different lives. Like some of us are sort of in the corporate sector, some of us are tradesmen, some of us are creatives. We've been musicians, some of us have been musicians at times. It's a crazy kind of thing, and it's got to the stage now. It really doesn't matter what, in inverted commas, social status or income levels or what any of us are at. None of us care, because at the end of the day, it still feels like we're teenagers catching up when we all get together.
Yeah.
So I think, you've got to, but the other thing is, Melanie, the critical thing is, and you'll know that because you and I have this rapport as well, is that you got to be there through the bad times.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where a lot of friendships come undone.
Absolutely.
And that's when you really, and it's like anything, right? Like any kind of relationship that of any type that we have as humans, like it's when the hard times hit. But
well, when the hard times hit, you know who your genuine friends are, because there's people that'll be in your life, Melanie, that'll be there in the good times, that will have a beer with you at the pub and they'll play pool or whatever it is, and they'll have a good laugh with you and they want to go out and, I don't know, play golf or whatever. But when the hard times come, they don't want to be around you because that brings them down. They'd rather just be with someone else to go to the pub with and play golf with or whatever it is. It's when you're going through the rough stuff and your friends are saying, it's okay, mate. I'm there for you. I'm coming around. I'm going to see you. I'm going to ring you. Yep. We're going to go out somewhere and you're going to talk to me and tell me all about what's happening. They can give a friendly ear, some kind advice. Just listen. Just be there to tell you everything's going to be okay. They're your true friends.
Yeah. And I think it sounds like you have an exceptional, I think you're probably the exception to the rule where you've had really long-term friends that you've grown with. And I even wonder if there's a difference between men and women with is that your observation with friendships? Because I find that particularly when I was younger, there was a lot of intensity between female friendships, like a lot of intensity,
right.
Normally because the guys matured a bit later. So you'd be, especially when I was 17, 18, 19, I was in the Air Force, we had really what I would call intense friendships as girls, like we really just lived in each other's pockets. But there's more complexity I've found, and I'm generalizing here, with women's friendships. And I've always had a mixture of male and female friendships. And I get different things from, like, I find that men, and it sounds like you're like this with your mates, where it'd be really chill. You might talk about a range of topics, but with women, it can actually get, it's a lot more emotional. There's a lot more invested in it, and there's a lot more triggering that seems to go on. And that's something I've found difficult to manage with female friendships over the years. I love having a mixture of friendships, like with men and women, but
so do I.
I've just found that it can be more complicated with women, and that's in some ways that can be a good thing, because you can talk to them about anything.
So you think more emotionally in depth,
yes.
a lot more? You're probably right.
Again, that this is not going to be for everyone. This has been my experience, and I think it's more pronounced in your 30s if you choose to have kids or not, because just by default, and I know with my family members who have kids, women then are each other's support networks for their
Yep.
kids and stuff. And then, just by that default and the time it takes to raise little kids, and, it can, yeah, when being single through your 30s as a single woman can be really, yeah, well, you can sort of find yourself out on no man's land, so to speak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally understand, but it can actually happen the opposite way too, Melanie. I saw, friends of mine that had kids early had the same experience. They were sort of cut out of the loop, or not really cut out of the loop, but they're busy, they've got kids to look after, and their other friends are still out doing things, and whether it's they're off surfing or they're off doing something on the weekend, and they're at home with the kids. So it can actually work both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, especially if you have kids like in your early 20s, that can be a real cutoff from your friendship group that you may have had from high school.
Well, I'm really lucky as well, Mel, is that I've got quite a few very close female friends, including you. You've been a very good friend to me over the last 10 years, but I'm very lucky also that I don't have the boys around. Like, I've got my circle of friends around them, the guys that I play in a band with and stuff like that are really great friends of mine as well. But I also have some very good old friends that I have a very good relationship with that are female, and those friendships are different. They are. You can sort of let your guard down a little bit more, I think. So sometimes the boys, they just want to, if you're going through a bit of a rough time, they want to distract you. You want to take you out and do something that sort of makes you feel better. And I actually find that is really, really important as well. But, I'm lucky that most of my male friends are very, very good talkers and very good listeners, and will share their feelings and emotions as well. But I think it's very important for guys to have some good female friends in their lives as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about, so some of my regrets, I think, going into my 30s is how much expectation I had from friendships, because they were absolutely a vital part of my life, particularly through high school when I was really, struggling at home. And then this went my whole life, all through my 20s and right into my early 30s. So I had really high expectations. And I now realize that is possibly what could have been the end of some of my friendships.
So
Because
what do you mean? What do you mean? What was your high expectations?
I just actually really, I just valued friendship so highly. And probably because, I mean, you would know this. I think I've spoken in our first podcast. I was single for like 18 years. I wasn't in a relationship. So friendship was my primary relationship. So in that way, that was very different for a lot of people. Like, people were managing relationships, kids, work, and then friendships, whereas I pretty much put my life in my friendships. And I think that was a bit of pressure going into my 30s on people.
Okay.
And because I am someone who, and this is what I found with my female friendships, is that a lot of my female friends have commented how I can be quite triggering. I'm actually really, I'm not afraid to talk about anything. And I'm just like, and I'm quite opinionated. Like, I'm quite upfront in my opinions. And that's some feedback that I've got from women that can be quite confronting. And and I don't have that experience at all with male friends, because that you could just say anything to a lot of guys and it'd be just like, oh yeah, whatever. So that's
you and I have talked about that.
Yeah,
you've actually said, because you and I we've had some ding dong discussions, and which have often led to differing of ideas. But I almost thrive off that. Like, I kind of like that banter that we have.
Yeah, but I have and then again, it's just about attracting your tribe, because I've just, I reconnected about 18 months ago with my sister's friend that we went to high school with, who, was mainly her friend, but we've ended up being really good friends. And she is someone that I could say anything to. Like, she's been in the
Right.
media industry before, so she's kind of like a producer and journo. So that's where I think that you have to find your tribe and know yourself enough to know who's going to be someone that you're going to be compatible with friends with, because the number one thing that you should feel in a friendship is complete comfort to be yourself, right?
Totally.
It's like,
Exactly.
and you don't want to feel like you're walking on eggshells. And I think that has been my experience over the last couple of years, particularly with my female friendships, and they have now ended because I don't want to be triggering someone. I don't want to have someone who's not always triggered by me, or I am triggered by their response. I just want to feel really like I can just be myself and say whatever I want within reason. You're not going to, but yeah, I think that that's something that's come up for me. And, and I've actually just recently met another new girlfriend, and it was through my dancing, which we're about to release on the
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And what's really interesting about that is that when we go to dance, it's silent. Like, so there's no talking once you enter the dance room. So I just purely went on energy. I'm like, I would really like to be friends with that girl. And it turns out that she felt the same, but we didn't end up talking until, we'd been dancing a few times, and she came out afterwards and we just started chatting. And then we tentatively made plans to catch up with coffee, and yeah, now we hang out. So I think for me, I found that it just needs to happen organically as well, where
Yep.
yeah, it's kind of an energetic exchange. So yeah,
It's a bit different. When you see kids making friends, like I see my 6-year-old daughter making friends, and she'll make friends with anyone at the playground really quickly. But and when you're in your even teens and early 20s through those work environments or uni or college environments, I think it's easier to make friends then. But Mel, in your 40s, it's a lot different, isn't it?
yeah, it's absolutely. But sometimes you just got to take the chance. You just got to say, I remember, when I was at work in my 30s and I was sort of looking for a new friend. And I did just go up to someone and say, would you want to be my new friend? And, like just putting yourself up there. I mean, it is about being the same rejection fears come up if you ask someone out, and you might want to strike up a friendship. It's the same stuff, right, that could come up. Um, and that's why I do think it needs to happen more organically as you get older. Like you need to have shared interests. So going to dancing it's a shared interest, right? So I think that's when
Yeah.
you get older, it's probably how people need to do it a bit more. And gyms are a big place where people meet friends, believe it or not. So
Absolutely.
shared interests, and you being a musician, you would meet that through friends. So I think that would be how you can meet people as you get older and have that.
Yeah, well, sort of mutual interests are really, really important. But for me, like those sort of people, you can have sort of those circles of people that come into your life at particular times, whether it's through a hobby or whether it's through the workplace or whether it's through like a similar social setting. And sometimes those people can come in and out of your life, and they were good friends at the time, but then think your circumstances change, or things sort of, life moves in a different direction, or you physically move away from those areas. And I've had friends over the years, Melanie, where I'll often sort of think about how they are and have really great memories of that period of time, but not necessarily keep in touch with them like those close circles that you have. What's your
Yeah,
experience like that?
yeah, I think it's really important. Yeah, they're exactly the same. And through, obviously a lot of spiritual work, and that I've seen how people have come into my life for a reason, as friends, and gone out. And then I have a little process I do now, which is like an affirmation to thank
Yeah,
people once a friendship ends, right? Because I believe all friends come into your life for a reason. whether it's
Absolutely.
something or to be something, and you always will value that. And for me, like, I guess when people get older, friendships don't end the way that they normally do when people are younger, where, you know, there might be some conflict that comes up or there's something. It's just generally
That's right.
you just change, right? And you move in separate ways. So I think that you need to be grateful for the friends that you've had in different phases of your life, and also grieve ones that you may have wanted to keep, but that you may have felt them pulling away, or vice versa. I've had that happen. You know, you can have that in a different situation. But yeah, I think that it's important for me.
It's amazing how, you know, sometimes people come into your life and they can just have such a radical impact on your life. Mel, you and I are a classic example of that. We kind of met each other quite randomly. Then we started working together.
Yeah.
And then, you know, that led into a great friendship that we've had for you know, 10 years now. And here we are with this amazing podcast that we just absolutely love doing. And I think that that's actually enhanced our friendship over the last couple of years of doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we wouldn't be doing the podcast together if we weren't friends, but that just came up when we both were talking about it. And that's what I'm saying about things being organic. Sometimes that's when you know you've got a real friendship. When we were just talking one day and the idea came up, and yeah, now we're 22 episodes in, and we're going to do some workshops together. And, you know, like, I think that somewhere we're always going to be intertwined in what we do.
Can I tell you a story as well? Like, I want to tell you a story on how, you know, those, when people come into your life that have such a profound effect. So like I'm saying, I've got a couple of really close circles of friends, you know, but going back to those sort of childhood friends of mine, I'll tell you, like, my best mate Gary and I, he's more like a brother to me than a mate. Like, we grew up, he lived next door to me over the back fence, and I was 5 and he was 7, and we're still hanging around together to this day. But, you know, there was another neighborhood friend that I met, and this is how it can happen. And this is a really good story. I actually told this story at his wedding a couple of years ago. I was invited to make a speech, and I told this story at a wedding. So when I went to, I changed schools when I was just late primary school, because I was moving into a private school. I was in a very small little primary school. And so my parents thought it'd be a good idea for me to go to the primary school of the high school that I was going to get used to it and make some friends, basically. So the week before I started at that school, I tripped over my friend Gary's fence and broke my arm quite badly. And so when I went to the new school, it was pretty brutal. It was an all-boys Catholic school, and they'd all known each other since grade 1, and I was there in grade 7, and I had a broken arm. So I couldn't really join in with any of the games. And what they did at that school was, at the start of the year, they did the trials for all the sports. So okay, you go in there, do the trial for rugby, you can do the trial for cricket, you do the trial for tennis, and you do the trial for swimming, and do the trial for athletics. Well, I missed all of that because I couldn't do any of them. So what did the school do? They thought, well, what are we going to do with the new kid? Let's make him the library assistant. Can you believe that? Anyway, so I was like, okay, you know, I can't play the sport. So I went and I was the library assistant. Well, I copped utter ridicule. Everyone, I'd never been bullied before, and I'd never been teased before. And it was just, I just didn't know how to handle it. And so there was a group of cool kids in the grade, and, you know, everyone was sort of pretty much giving me a bit of stick. Hey, library assistant, can you get me a book, and all that sort of stuff, right? So one day I lived fairly close to where the school was. So I was walking home from school, and up the top of the hill was one of the cool kids from school yelling out, hey, Sean. And I looked up there and thought, oh my God, that's that Chris guy. You know, I just put my head down and kept walking. I didn't want to be bullied. And he just kept yelling out, come up here, come up here. And I thought, oh, look, what do I do? Like if I keep walking, I'm just going to get teased. So I just walked up the hill and said, yeah, mate, what do you want? And he goes, do you live around the corner? And I said, yeah. And he said, oh, right. He said, oh, I've seen you at school. I didn't know you lived around the corner. My name's Chris. And I said, oh, how you going? And he said, oh, do you want to play some handball or whatever we were doing, right? So then we just sort of chatted for a little bit. And then the next day when I went to school, he came over to me and said, come here, mate, I'm going to introduce you to my mates. And from that day on, then, I was sort of welcomed into that sort of group of friends at school, and I started to really enjoy school. And then because Chris lived around the corner from me, then we sort of started hanging out after school. And then I introduced him to my friend Gary, and that's how the three of us became friends in the neighborhood. And so I was 11 years old. I turned 47 next year. So I don't know what the maths is, but that's a long time, 35 years plus of friendship. And his little girl and my little girl, who are 6 and 5, are now best mates hanging out together. And all of those friends and family are still as close as ever. And sometimes it can just take that one moment, of reaching out to someone to, I'll get quite emotional about it because that was a big moment for me. Like I was, and then over all of these years when I've had struggles in any time I've had struggles in my life, that same guy and that group of friends, Chris and Gary and Jeremy, have just been there through thick and thin, and we've all been there for each other. And it just takes someone sometime to just reach out. And it's emotional for me because I got emotional when I told that story at the wedding. Everyone thought I was going to say something really funny. I probably did, afterwards, but there's many funny stories I could have told. But I think that was, really important to let people know how valuable that experience was.
Sean, I reckon that's a perfect way to wrap up the episode and to say to our listeners, reach out, put yourself out there to make new friends, because you never know what can happen.
Absolutely. And if you haven't been in contact with one of your friends, after listening to this, pick up the phone, give them a call, organise to catch up.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks, everyone. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. It really helps us with the algorithms. Share it with your friends. And Melanie, I just want to say as well, I really want to thank you for your friendship the last 10 years. Also, you've been a rock in my life.
Thanks, Sean.
Over a long period of time. And, I really value your friendship. And, you've become one of my inner circle best friends. And I want to thank you publicly.
Same for me, Sean. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening.